a question just about everyone is now asking. What will society look like when this ends? We start exploring that question tonight with a man who holds many titles. CNBC contributor Walter Isaacson is a professor of history at Tulane, and he is with us live tonight from beautiful New Orleans. Walter, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Good to be with you.
We discuss this question so often now. The president was talking about getting back to some semblance of normalcy tonight, perhaps sooner than most people thought. What does normal mean to you in this new environment? What should we expect?
Well, one thing we're going to do is a little bit more social distancing. Secondly, we're going to have to redefine the nature of work, because I think that having health care, all the benefits, sick leave, paid leave, all those sort of things connected to your employer, that doesn't work very well in a society. We've had a society in which the divide between knowledge workers on the one hand, and by knowledge workers, it's also finance workers, that sort of thing. And on the other hand, people who work in factories, service jobs, the gig economy, that has grown wider over the past 10 or 15 years. Well, this thing was like a cleaver. It really divided it. Those of us, myself included, who can work from home, we were in a totally different situation than the, waiters or bus drivers, or for that matter, people who worked in factories or in stores. So I think we're going to have to make sure that we come out of this coronavirus without exacerbating this divide we've always had in society.
So interesting. We almost have to rethink everything about what work is. The CEO of Cushman & Wakefield was on the network earlier today and talked about rethinking the workspace itself, the way that our workers use transportation in getting to work, the way they ride an elevator up to the floor in which they work on, the way they dine during the lunch hour and where they do that. This is a whole new experience, Walter, that the American worker is going to have to think about here forward, not to mention the employer themselves.
Absolutely. You're going to need a different type of workplace. But frankly, we can't go on like that forever. I mean, it's going to be a new century of biotechnology, I think, just like the past 50 years have been an information and digital technology transformation. And I think we're going to have to throw a lot of society's resources to figure out how do we have very targeted drugs, perhaps new types of genetically engineered drugs that will take on viruses. Because in the end, we cannot survive wave after wave like this, where we have to work from afar and socially distance.
Are we supposed to tell our children now, Walter, to forget about computer coding and start thinking about DNA and genetic coding?
I do think that the students in the past 30 or 40 years, those of my generation, who learned digital coding, and now we're hammering that in, learn the digital coding, they're going to be surpassed by people who learn the code of life, the DNA coding. And it's not going to be 01110 type coding. It's going to be ACTG, HCTG. So, yeah, I think the new wave of great jobs in the 21st century will be people who understand the code of life and people who go into biology rather than information technology. Although the combination of biology and information technology will be strong, because it's by using computer techniques not only to sequence viruses or DNA, but also run through all the things that we've had in terms of vaccines and treatments, and to use huge data sets and combine that with biotech. That's going to be the wave of the future. But if I have one thing I say to my students at Tulane, it's don't forget to take your biology courses.
For sure, and maybe like it more than you ever have in the past.
Hey, biology is quite beautiful, and this coronavirus makes us not think so. But as we understand the fundamentals of biology, I think we should all try to embrace that we should understand the difference between a virus and a bacteria, between DNA and RNA. And we should educate ourselves as a society to understand biology better.
The Levi's CEO was on earlier today, and I thought said something interesting, and maybe some would find it troubling, frankly. He used the words right-sizing an organization. I'm wondering how you think managers and CEOs and business owners are now going to be rethinking the needs that they truly have on the other side of all this and how that may have changed?
I think the main thing they'll rethink is their space needs. I mean, when leases come up, people will say, wait, we've had a lot of our meetings by Zoom for 2 months. It's probably more efficient to have half the number of meetings or 3/4 the number of meetings, but generally do a lot of our conferencing through Skype or Zoom. I think that we have to make ourselves a more productive society. Obviously, if downsizing some industries leads us to be more productive, that can create more jobs in the future.
Interesting, Walter. I want you to listen to something that happened on my program at noon last week. It was a conversation, in fact, that I was having with the investor Chamath Palihapitiya. He's from the West Coast. This happened on the halftime report as we discussed who should be rescued by the government and who shouldn't. It's a clip, by the way, Walter, that was viewed 10 million times on Twitter since Thursday. Chamath clearly touched a nerve. And today, the investor Leon Cooperman responded in what's now become a debate over capitalism, if you will, in the age of COVID-19. Let's listen and we can react on the other side of that. You keep saying propping up zombie companies. Are you arguing to let airlines, for example, fail?
Yes.
Why? I mean, how does that make sense in the broader scheme of the economy?
Because when you look at what it means, this is why I'm saying, this is a lie that's been purported by Wall Street. When a company fails, it does not fire their employees. It goes through a packaged bankruptcy, right? If anything, what happens is the people who have the pensions inside those companies, the employees of these companies, end up owning more of the company. The people that get wiped out are the speculators that own the unsecured tranches of debt or the folks that own the equity. And by the way, those are the rules of the game. That's right, because these are the people that purport to be the most sophisticated investors in the world. They deserve to get wiped out. But the employees don't get wiped out. The pensions don't typically get wiped out.
Why does anybody, I just don't understand, why does anybody deserve, using your word, to get wiped out from a crisis created like this? How does anybody deserve to get wiped out?
Well, but just be clear, who are we talking about? We're talking about a hedge fund that serves a bunch of billionaire family offices? Who cares? Let them get wiped out. Who cares? They don't get the summer in the Hamptons? Who cares?
It's a different form of subsidy. If the government refused to bail out some of these guys, there would be a much greater amount of unemployment, and the government would have to pay all sorts of safety net benefits to these unemployed. Okay? To the extent that they're helping these companies through a difficult period, they avoid the huge surge in unemployment, and they will get a return on their investment. The government made money on AIG. The government made money on Chrysler, I believe. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I believe they came out making money. Okay? So the government is the lender of last resort. That's a more preferred outcome than basically letting guys go bankrupt when something so totally unforeseen occurred.
So, Walter, you heard Chamath and Lee Cooperman there, and what we essentially have is a debate over what capitalism is right now. There are those who say this is how capitalism is supposed to work. The weak hands fail if faced with an external shock. The other side of it is, where in capitalism does it say, don't go to a movie theater, don't get on an airplane or go to a hotel or go to a casino or do anything social, and then the business that fails, oh, well, that's just the way it is because that's how capitalism says it's going to be. How should we think about capitalism today?
Well, this is this is a huge disruptive thing that's not part of the normal course of events. So I think it's fine to say we'll let a few hedge fund billionaires go out of it. But that's not what we're talking about. When everything from movie theaters to restaurants to hospitality to travel to almost any company has had this unforeseen event, it doesn't make sense to say it's great to just say this is only a few hedge fund billionaires who's going to get hurt. And it's not just about going through Chapter 11 or some type of bankruptcy. These are places that will have to totally shut down. And when you have a shutdown of the economy, this is not a good thing. So I agree with Mr. Cooperman. You got to figure out smart ways to get people through this crisis. Now, let me just say something, because I do have a conflicting interest. I've been on the board of an airline, so I don't want to comment on any way on the airline issues.
Understood, but you could substitute hotel for airline or casino or restaurant for airline. The greater point is who should be bailed out and who shouldn't. And the other point,
and let me make a point real quick here. The hedge fund people and the people with, millions of dollars, they're not the ones suffering. I'm sitting here over on a balcony in New Orleans. I can see the people who are getting hurt. Those are the people in the gig economy, the people who had hourly wages, the people who, if you destroy small businesses across this country, they are going to get creamed. And it's not just a question of those businesses filing for bankruptcy. These businesses are not going to make it over the hump. We do not want an America like that.
The big worry, of course, Walter, as we think about what the other side, so to speak, is going to be, we don't want to make the income inequality gap any greater than it already is and hurt the people who are already hurting even more and who are undoubtedly going to be hurt on the other side of this. We're talking about a stock market today, Walter, that just had an incredible week, largely because of what the Federal Reserve and the government have done in rescuing at the same time when you have jobless claims that are astronomically high and horrific. And we have to reconcile these somewhere on the other side, don't we?
Yeah, we've had an economy that's generally been less fair to the average worker, less fair to the people doing goods and service and manufacturing than it has been to the people in the knowledge industries and the financial industries. And we've watched that for 20 years. Now, we didn't have something this disruptive come along, but this disruptive thing has been particularly painful to those people who actually physically have to go to a job in order to get their paycheck. So I think we have to have a new type of economy where we value real work. And this is something when we come out, if you read Michael Sandel's brilliant piece in the New York Times today, it's about valuing the real nature of work. That's what we have to come out of this with.
I did. I have it in front of me. I did it in reading up and preparing for this. It is a good read. I urge everybody to check that out. Walter, as usual, thank you so much for your time and, most importantly, your insights tonight. We appreciate it.